Everyone I disagree with must be a grifter. The name-calling tactic that some losers resort to the moment they hear a differing view. Oh, isn't it just charming how some people think they've mastered the art of debate by calling everyone they disagree with a grifter. It's almost cute how they imagine the world is so simple that anyone with a differing opinion must be out to make a quick buck. What's alarming and hilarious in equal measure is that there are genuinely plenty of pillocks out there who think this way. Individuals who spend so much of their life terminally online at a computer that they have become entrenched in their own worldview, completely losing the ability to even entertain the notion that someone might genuinely believe something different without some sneaky ulterior motive. But of course, it doesn't stop there. These folks just love to reduce complex, nuanced discussions into simple black and white terms. Someone holding a different view? Oh, they must be a manipulative grifter. It's such an easy, tidy way to avoid having to wrestle with the fact that, shockingly, people can have deeply held beliefs that don't align with their own. Why acknowledge the world is full of different perspectives when it's so much more comfortable to assume bad faith? This isn't just the attitude of a few smooth-brained individuals who occasionally crawl out of the woodwork in my comment section. No, sadly, the term grifter has become a lazy go-to label for game journalists, YouTubers, and, wait for it, even some of those who work in the almighty AAA game industry because, of course, why engage in meaningful critique when you can just slap on a trendy insult and call it a day? This is a level of discourse that some people stoop to, sadly, and as for me, well, brace yourself. Because apparently I am now labelled as being a right-wing griftoid. Yeah, seriously. Because what could be a better argument than throwing around the most juvenile, cringe-inducing insults imaginable? Very much indeed. I am Lady Decade. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we are about to absolutely annihilate one of the most pathetic and overused insults on the internet. Video games, video games, video games. Don't you just love these things? While for the most part, gaming is becoming an increasingly expensive hobby, fortunately, I am aware of where to get most games for next to nothing. Whether you're craving the mythical realms of Black Myth Wukong, the intense firefights of Space Marines 2, or the explosive action of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I've got the secret to unlocking massive savings. Explore modern marvels and cherished classics, all at jaw-dropping discounts. Just click on my affiliate link below and prepare to stock your arsenal with the best games out there for a fraction of the price. Happy shopping. The internet. It's a rather silly place, isn't it? A bizarre hyper-reality full of ever-cozy echo chambers. So often people are so snug in their little social media bubbles, surrounded by like-minded friends, that any opposing viewpoint feels like a threat. And when you're that sheltered, of course, it's only logical to assume anyone outside the bubble must be deceptive or exploitative. After all, how could anyone possibly think differently unless they're trying to trick you? This sadly seems to be the mindset of many oddballs who lurk on the information superhighway. Their lives have become so insular that they can't fathom any criticism or opposing view as anything other than bad faith. It's precisely why I, along with countless others, get lazily dismissed as grifters the instant we dare to express any opinion about the modern AAA gaming industry. Unsurprisingly, game journalists are among the deplorables who often engage in this tactic when trying to belittle those whom they do not agree with. A recent example comes from Zarmina Khan, the senior editor of PlayStation Lifestyle. In her article, she covers some of the recent reactions that have been taking place online to the Ghost of Yotei announcement, the Ghost of Tsushima sequel that is replacing the series' original protagonist with a strong female lead. Considering the verified push for advanced diversity, equity and inclusion in PlayStation games outlined on Sony's website, this has led to many gamers is becoming rightfully concerned that this new entry may choose to emphasize modern ideological and social issues rather than feature a more traditional story like its predecessor. This speculation has only further been fueled after it was revealed that Erika Ishii would be the lead actor in the game, an extremely vocal and opinionated trans activist, causing some to worry that the game's focus may shift from storytelling to promoting political and social agendas. Let's be honest, looking at how the modern PlayStation brand wants to be perceived, this theory is not even remotely far-fetched. But instead of bothering to present a reasonable counter-argument to Yotei's critics, the bad faith journalist predictably opted for the laziest route possible, a hit piece. Rather than engaging with the actual points raised by those who disagree with her, like I often do in my videos, she just slapped together a tired smear piece, dismissing anyone with legitimate concerns as the usual social media grifters, because why bother with facts or debate when you can just label your opponents as grifters and end it right there? How intellectually brave. From my own observations, both the political left and right online have increasingly co-opted the term grifter to discredit their opponents, often wielding it as a way to delegitimize figures who challenge the status quo or gain significant attention. Occasionally, this label can be, in my opinion, used appropriately. Anita Sarkeesian, a prominent feminist media critic, was labelled a grifter by some, for example, particularly after an old video surfaced where she self-snitched that she didn't like nor did she grow up playing video games, despite her role as a commentator on the portrayal of women in gaming, crowdfunding a huge sum of money, claiming to be a lifelong fan of games. This label emerged during the height of the Gamergate controversy, where Sarkeesian's work was polarising within the gaming communities. Her critics argued that by not having an authentic background in gaming, she was merely exploiting the culture for financial gain and attention through her Tropes versus Women in Video Games series, which was funded via Kickstarter. For those calling her a grifter, her lies about growing up playing video games were seen as evidence that her critique was disingenuous, more focused on pushing a political agenda than truly engaging within the medium. To them, it reinforced the idea that she was no more than a grifter. Left-wing grifter is often used to describe someone who seemingly exploits social justice causes or progressive movements for personal gain, while on the right is used to dismiss conservative influencers or pundits who profit from sensationalism or populist rhetoric. The overuse of the term has diluted its meaning, turning it into more of a lazy ad hominem attack rather than a substantive critique of individuals who are truly exploiting political movements for profit. Ultimately, both sides are using grifter as a convenient label to avoid engaging in deeper discussions about the motivations and merits of opposing viewpoints. Due to this bastardization, the term grifter has increasingly become a catch-all pejorative used across the political spectrum, often more to stifle debate than to offer any real analysis. Originally intended to pinpoint individuals exploiting political or social movements for personal gain, its overuse has significantly blunted its impact. To put it simply, everyone I don't agree with must be a grifter is just the modern version of the old meme phrase, everyone I don't agree with is Hitler. The tendency in some discussions, especially in heated or polarized environments like social media or politics, to unfairly compare someone who has a different viewpoint to Adolf Hitler has long been recognized as an example of Reductio ad Hitlerum. This logical fallacy is often employed to discredit an opponent's argument by associating it, however tangentially, with Hitler or Nazism, rather than addressing the substance of the argument itself. Similarly, the contemporary misuse of grifter is becoming a form of reductio ad griftum, where the accusation is used not to critique the genuine ethical shortcomings of an individual, but rather to dismiss or delegitimize differing perspectives without proper scrutiny. This approach not only undermines meaningful dialogue, but also erodes the power of the term itself, reducing it to little more than a rhetorical shortcut that bypasses a thoughtful debate. But even if this is nonsense, then why do some people in my comments section call me a far-right grifter? Am I literally Hitler? Well, no. I very much consider myself to be a moderate centrist. Basically, my political views are characterised by a blend of both left-wing and right-wing ideologies, but I generally seek middle ground and prefer moderate solutions over extreme positions. To address issues effectively, I believe we should aim for solutions that appeal to a broad spectrum of people, advocating for policies that avoid extremes on either side. The goal should be to maintain stability and prevent polarisation. I strongly oppose any form of extremism and feel it's important to scrutinise spaces where extreme ideologies start to take hold. Regrettably, I've observed increasing signs that extreme ideologies have permeated Western AAA gaming, and I've posted numerous videos on this channel lately that clearly illustrate why I hold this view, which is why I am often labelled a grifter, I guess by left-wing extremists. Essentially, it isn't because I am right-wing, it is because I am a moderate who opposes radical left-wing ideology being too heavily inserted into my entertainment. Personally, like most moderates, I tend to have a nuanced view regarding identity politics. As a so-called woman of colour myself, God, I hate that progressive, reductionist sort of language. I recognise the importance of addressing issues related to identity, acknowledging that these factors can influence individuals' experiences. However, it's also vital to remember that our obsession with identity shouldn't fragment us or pull us away from the collective aspirations and principles that bind us. Sadly, this is where Western entertainment is currently missing the mark, failing to balance these elements effectively, and for this reason, we should continue to criticise the hell out of all of it until they start to get the message. The problem with the current approach to diversity in video games is that it often comes off as contrived and insincere, more of a corporate attempt to tick a box than a genuine effort to enrich the narrative or gameplay. This can shatter the illusion of the game world and diminish the overall enjoyment. When executed properly, diversity in games blends so effortlessly into the fabric of the story that it's virtually unnoticeable unless deliberately considered. You're too engaged in the action to reflect on its inclusion. This is how diversity should work, when characters appear to naturally belong in their world rather than being shoehorned in to meet diversity quotas or to make a political statement. Take Barrett Wallace from Final Fantasy VII, for example. He's not just a token figure, he's the leader of the eco-terrorist group Avalanche and pivotal to the story, actively fighting against the Shinra Corporation to protect the planet. His deep, well-crafted backstory is rooted in his experiences and intricately connected to the expansive narrative of the game. His relationship with his adopted daughter Marlene unveils a tender, caring side that adds depth to his character and contrasts sharply with his rugged exterior. Barrett's significant role in the game highlights his relevance, and in my experience, I've never seen him dismissed as merely a diversity, equity, inclusion character. This is an example of diversity seamlessly integrated into a game's fabric, enhancing the story rather than disrupting it, unlike many other attempts that come across as nothing more than diversity for diversity's sake. After all, who doesn't love Barrett? Despite my somewhat moderate views on the world, thanks to extremism, I will continue to be labelled a villainous grifter by some, and sadly this behaviour isn't even anything new in society. Back in 1987, John Cleese of Monty Python fame starred in a timeless video about extremism, with, sadly, every part of it still being applicable to extremists 37 years after it was originally shot. So, let me read to you such a monologue, as it justifies why some people refer to me as a grifter despite only ever sharing very moderate views on topics. The legendary John Cleese once said,
"Seriously though, we've heard a lot about extremism recently. A nastier, harsher atmosphere everywhere, more abuse and bother boy behaviour, less friendliness, tolerance and respect for opponents. Alright, but what we never hear about extremism is its advantages. Well, the biggest advantage of extremism is that it makes you feel good, because it provides you with enemies. Let me explain. The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies, and all the goodness in the world is in you. Attractive, isn't it? So if you have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and you therefore enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons, and that if it wasn't for them you'd actually be good-natured, courteous and rational all the time. So if you want to feel good, become an extremist. Okay, now you have a choice. If you join the hard left, they'll give you their list of authorised enemies. Almost all kinds of authority, especially the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, newspaper owners, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and of course, moderates. Or, if you'd rather be an extremist on the hard right, no problem, fine. You still get a lovely list of enemies, only they're different ones. Noisy minority groups, unions, Russia, weirdos, demonstrators, welfare sponges, meddlesome clergy, peaceniks, the BBC, strikers, social workers, communists, and of course, moderates. And upstart actors. Now, once you're armed with one of these super lists of enemies, you can be as nasty as you like and yet feel your behaviour is morally justified. So you can strut around abusing people and telling them you could eat them for breakfast and still think of yourself as a champion of truth, a fighter for the greater good, and not the rather sad, paranoid schizoid that you really are.
John Cleese's statement cleverly captures several psychological and social dynamics at play in extremist ideologies and demonstrates why radicals try to label people they don't like as grifters. Joining the fringe extremes of society offers psychological rewards by assigning a clear and external source of the world's problems, the enemy. This black and white thinking simplifies complex issues, allowing individuals to feel a sense of clarity and purpose. Essentially, it's absolutely perfect for all the smooth-brained thinkers out there. It particularly appeals to those who harbour anger and resentment by giving them a socially acceptable outlet for those feelings, framed as a fight against what is to them a clear evil, which explains all the unhinged articles we have seen published by game journalists recently. The problem isn't gamers, the journalists just project their insecurities. John Cleese's video also explains why these people moral grandstand all the time, as it is to maintain a positive self-image by positioning all the goodness within their in-group and all the badness within the out-group. This self-concept is crucial as it enables individuals to see themselves as champions of justice and righteousness, even when their actions might be harmful or morally dubious. In an increasingly complex world, this simplification of politics can be mentally relieving for both the far right and radical left alike. It removes the burden of nuanced thinking or acknowledging the legitimacy of opposing viewpoints, which can be mentally taxing, which is why they are so quick to label anyone who disagrees with them as a grifter. Cleese's statement is a poignant reminder of the psychological comfort radicalization can offer, while also highlighting its inherent dangers and fallacies. This understanding is crucial in a world where polarization and partisan politics are increasingly prevalent, and why 99% of the time we can label anyone who refers to someone else as a grifter as a complete fool who lacks critical thinking skills. Essentially, I am a grifter to any of these people who don't agree with me. Don't forget, you can get huge discounts on thousands of video games by using my links via the pinned comment. Every purchase supports independent voices like mine, or if you want to support what I do in a more personal way, you can gain access to my cosplay library and more by backing the channel over on Patreon.